Okay, here we are for another week of updates on the MCP app agent discovery ecosystem. I am very jealous of where you are, Han, because
I
you have a
am
way better
in
background than I
Norway
do this
now.
week. Yeah, very cool. How is it?
It's beautiful here. I know the rest of Europe is in a heat wave, but it's here is like absolutely perfect. I guess we benefited a little bit from the heat wave.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I'm in London at the moment. Last week it was about 35, which is pretty interesting with no AC, no barely any aircon. It's been sleeping has been interesting, but also can't complain. I think like the UK is bad at like we finally get good weather and then people complain about it, so it's good. It's good to have good weather. Cool. We
Yes,
have
absolutely.
yeah, we have like a couple of things we wanted to cover today. So first of all, there's just been, I think, in general, just quite some updates for things that are happening within the Claude ecosystem and the ChatGPT app ecosystem, just in terms of like practical things based on the fact that you can just see they're starting to scale these ecosystems and therefore they're making a couple of changes that are important to note. So we've seen a lot of those. We'll give some updates there. And we've got Fable 5. That's another big topic that's just been re-released. So kind of just a general interesting area of discussion. And we definitely suggest people, going, trying and playing with that soon before it kind of goes behind the API. And a couple of other updates as well that we'll run through. I think first thing that we can actually start with is I'll share screen and we can have a look at just what's happened over the last couple of weeks. So first thing actually is an update from us. So we have added Codex plugin tracking to our agent discoverability tracker. So, as a reminder, you can get this from going to agentdiscoverability.com/track. And then basically you can just, track, obviously every ChatGPT app, every Claude connector, but now you can track every Codex plugin as well. So you can sort of just filter on Codex. And actually, I think this is almost quite an interesting area to start with because we are starting to see a real pickup of connectors or plugins that are getting added. For those that are sort of newer to the space, the thing that's interesting about Codex plugins is that they are actually a combination of your MCP app and skills. What they can also be potentially is even just a CLI and skills. So it's a bundle of different agentic capabilities that sort of agentic surfaces that help agents, well execute tasks and do things. Apps are obviously at the core of that. And what's interesting as well is that I suspect this is just a bet, but we'll probably start to see plugins also come to ChatGPT because effectively they're just a way better way for the apps to work. When you bundle them with skills, you can get those skills to be able to really well understand certain tasks, better use the app, control the app, and do rest of workflows that fit around it. And so it's quite interesting to see which plugins are live. You can also see that they actually split, and interestingly, not just across kind of like core B2B workflows, you could call it. There are a small number of kind of B2C things that are sitting in there. But nonetheless, we've seen a pick up a little bit of a flat line, but I know there's a lot of companies that are trying to get into Codex right now. And actually pretty similar if I go back for the full kind of platform view, what we're basically seeing is, and I can even filter on a so maybe like a 30-day view of this, like ChatGPT and Claude have recently had a bit of a pickup. So like you're seeing, it's kind of hard to see maybe from this view. I can do kind of a net view, but basically ChatGPT, for example, is they're releasing like 30 to 40 apps pretty much every day, between 20 and 40. And so they have really picked up. And Claude actually as well, considering how many they've releasing, we've seen recently they've also kind of like increased their numbers quite significantly as well. So both ecosystems are definitely picking up.
Yeah, it is great to see, and I can see that as they having new apps coming in, they have made a lot of improvement, tighten up the security and the approval process. So I think that probably we should talk about that. We've seen a lot of changes in the approval process for both Cloud and ChatGPT right now. I know you saw some with Cloud right now, like we no longer have the Google form anymore. They have
Yeah,
added
right.
that into a dashboard right now. Should we show our audience?
Yeah, so let me share that actually. So the best thing you can do, so if you want to go to, if you type in Claude observability, right? Observability, then this is actually something that we briefly covered last time. We mainly covered the dashboard and what metrics are being covered, but actually this post additionally covers an update to the submission process. So if you go to this view and then you go right to the bottom, you can basically see around like, what do you need to join the directory? If you click on learn more, I'll get taken to another page. So I need to just switch. Basically, this is the best place to look. It's just their docs on how to submit to the directory. So for those that might have missed it, definitely check this out. This is the updated process. I think a few things to note. Those that weren't aware, there's obviously a range of things that you can actually submit. So in short, it's either like you have the desktop extensions as well, but it's an MCP server or an MCP app. It effectively means, do you want just the server or do you want UI that sits on top of it as well? So you can just submit an MCP server. You don't need the UI component to get it to be a connector. And one other thing is actually that you do need a team or enterprise organization account. Now, that is like if you're a solo developer, don't let that put you off. Like a team plan can be, £15 a month for two people. So $30 a month or £30 a month. So it's easy to have, but you do need to get that set up like an organization account to then be able to kind of do the submission. And then I think other things to just mention are kind of the submission requirements, and then they've more clearly laid out, I think, URLs, which maybe you'll speak to, Han, but then also some other kind of specific app specs. These are all things they had in the Google form for anyone that's been through it, but they've now got kind of a more specific, I suppose, rigid approach to what's going to happen, over the process, I think, which is great because it just means that they're, better communicating with developers on what's going to happen. And honestly, it's great that they're doing this because, we have many, customers and people that we're speaking to that are just waiting. People that are, we built the app, waiting to get it approved. And lots of companies are kind of in the same position now. So at least there's a little bit more clarity rather than kind of this black box Google form and email exchange that's been happening for some months. So that's on the chat Claude side, I should say. But Han, you were saying as well that you've seen some stuff on ChatGPT as well. You're on mute.
Yes, I do see some changes in ChatGPT, but just I just saw that. Let me see if I can show screen.
Mm-hmm.
So here are like some of the apps that I've tested. Some of them I've rejected. I've never resubmitted. But say for this one that has been approved, you can now when you wanted to make an update to it, when you create a versions before, like you can always change the MCP server URL. But now I know that ChatGPT has made some changes so that you may not be able to change the URL now. So if I were to change this URL into something else, sorry, let me have to get a new URL. A real URL, it won't let me get. Like it won't let you change it won't let you change the URL right now. And this has affected some of our customer when they have like a big changes that change the definition of the URL of the tools of their MCP tools. They cannot change the MCP server URL anymore. And that and we also see that ChatGPT now has started to cache the UI of the MCP apps. So say if you have like an old UI and then you go to the next version of the UI, you have to go through the submission process. Because if you don't go through the submission process, like ChatGPT will still use the old version because they cache that version of the UI right now. And we do see some customers right now or some developers right now are having issues with making sure, figuring out like their engineering process so that like what changes that ChatGPT is going to save, what changes that you can make, and how are you going to keep your server and your UI consistent? Because sometimes if you change just if you expect your UI and your server to change, but ChatGPT still cache your old UI, then your server and your UI will be mismatched. So we do see like a lot of the changes that you have with ChatGPT process right now. And yeah, so we do think that this is like an effort for them to tighten it up, to make sure that people do not sneaking in changes without going through the approval process. But at the same
Right.
time, for customers, it's they we will need to like if you already have an app and you're making changes to the app, you have to be aware of like what changes that you are going to make so that you can properly manage the URL, the MCP server URL, as well as your server and your UI, so that you don't cause any breaking chains when you submit a new version.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, makes a ton of sense, and it's just good, I think, for developers and anyone working on these apps to just be aware of it, because yeah, and it makes sense from their perspective, right? It's kind of crazy that you could just change the URL and kind of automatically publish and not go through kind of the same check, and then it's sort of whatever content you want, right, on some of these servers. So
Uh,
I think it's
so I
natural that
think
they're going to tighten up.
I think that changing the URL is actually not a bad idea. So I don't know why they actually disallow. I guess that to prevent people to like use an updated app to submit an app that is completely different, right?
Exactly.
But at the same time, it is so easy to change the definitions. When I say definition, I mean it include like the tool description, which is so important for an MCP apps. So it's so easy to change that as well. And yeah, like I think that they need to find a balance here on like how to allow people to make changes without having to worry about, the cascading effects of all of it. But I do think that they are learning as well because we do see a lot of improvement. I think the caching is great because otherwise people can just get the app approved and then just keep making changes to it, keep making changes to the UI, changes to the back end without going through the approval at all. So I do think that that is good, but I think it's still a work in progress.
Yeah, 100%. And it takes a while for these kind of review processes to iron out what makes sense, why does it make sense, and then also just on the OpenAI side, once it's kind of been like agreed and properly thought through, how do you make it quick enough so that teams can have fast iteration cycles? That's always the thing with, for example, mobile apps. Like spent years doing stuff in the mobile app space and growing apps there. You're always bound by Apple's approval process, right? Does it get accepted? Does it not? How quickly can the iteration happen? But very quickly, these just become update cycles, right? And Apple is extremely quick now at getting most things approved. So yeah, these are things you just don't have, like they're ecosystems that evolve over time as platforms grow.
Yeah, I have a lot of people like asking like, like when do we expect to get um their app get like, organic traffic, I don't think that we're gonna have like organic traffic until they tighten up the security because the worst thing that could happen to them is when they allow like some bad actors and like organic discovery just let tons of people discover apps that are malicious or like do not agree with their term of service. So I think that we probably won't see like a huge amount of traffic until they figure it out. But as far as we know, it seems like they're still making a lot of investment into this space.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, 100%. It's definitely a focus area, and you're seeing that also just with like their continued uptake of these apps every single week. So that's definitely a positive signal. Um, I think, unless there's anything else you wanted to talk about on the app side, I think we could chat a little bit about Fable 5 as well,
Oh, yeah,
just
let's do
because
that.
it's just because it's an insane model. I don't know how much you've had the chance to play with it yet, Han, but like we're using it a ton, and yeah, it's so good. I think obviously there's like a lot of controversy around why and how it's happened with these delays. I think it does lead to, just for what it's worth to comment on, I think like it is really interesting how this stuff is starting to evolve. And actually like it's relevant for a few reasons. So, you've obviously got these frontier models that are getting released, but you're now getting kind of issues with access and gated controls and the government stepping in. And these are like not minor things. So, if you are expected to be at the frontier of intelligence, and then you have, bans that come out around what models you can access, if you have like products in production, or you're doing research, or you're doing development, I mean, you do not have access to the same model you did. It is a massive issue for any company. We saw that with our own business. We are running like, you know, major platforms and workflows through these models, and then suddenly you're changing everything, and it's a nightmare. It's massively disruptive, and so it does also change a lot on what does the end ecosystem look like. And I think it's been a big couple of weeks for open source, and so why, like, what does it mean for companies now, and how are they going to think about kind of, I suppose, the lock-in to the frontier labs, and the need for them to also just have these open source models that work 100% of the time, that you're always going to have access to. I think that's one piece. The other piece is, what does it therefore mean for these ecosystems as companies start to get more scared of needing to own the harness layer, needing to own the model layer, needing to have more flexibility rather than kind of like this controlled lock into these ecosystems. And I think you even had, Alex Karp, who, a CEO of Palantir, who obviously has his own incentives, but him coming out with a partnership for NVIDIA as well, which then talks about, okay, we aren't going to, force you to give over all your intelligence over an API and then potentially build what you're building. We're going to allow for more open control. So I think there's just a lot that sits around this release. Like, obviously Fable is an amazing model. I would definitely recommend people trying it. But I think for this conversation also, when it comes to like, these platforms, how big will they become? What happens? I think there is no way that market doesn't grow and exist. But I think it's just worth noting that, open source is a very real thing. And like a lot of the kind of, coding and knowledge work layer will end up existing, I think, also, as a base in open source than, just sitting at the frontier.
Yeah, I think Fable definitely not only is an amazing model, it's also open up for so many questions. Right? It's like how much control all this lab has, how much control the government has. So it definitely opened up a lot of questions. But I do have a question, just personally for you. Like, I've heard a lot of people say that when Fable come back, like the capability is nowhere close to when it were in the beginning. That they have added a tons of guardrailing around it. Do you see a difference in what you use at all? For you, like it was just as good. I didn't get a chance to use it before they released it. It happened to be a busy day for me, and when I got to try it, it already got locked out. So I'm curious from your personal experience.
Yeah. Um, Nothing noteworthy, to be honest. Like the additional guardrails that we'd seen come in was that, for certain coding and testing tasks, you can be degraded to Opus 4.8. So that's effectively what happens, right? Like if they detect something that they deem not appropriate, they downgrade it. I didn't see any kind of like base reduction in performance. Didn't hear that from any of our, engineering team either. Um, but I and we weren't, from anything that I'm aware of, sort of like being degraded when we shouldn't. Um, so yeah, I don't know. Maybe that was just like our experience, but we weren't maybe testing on anything that was like, we're definitely not working on cybersecurity or like any kind of like biological security issues. So yeah, it was fine for us, and we found it to be like extremely performative. And like frankly, the model is nuts. It's an extremely good model. For me, one of the biggest things actually is just speed. This is something that I don't know if anyone else is finding this, and I think it's just like an issue in the industry, and I'm amazed it's not talked about more. It's just speed. Like it is just the models feel so slow at the moment. I have like so many tasks running, so many things going on. I don't know. I'm also impatient, but it's just like one of the best reasons to use Fable is just speed. You can just get more done. And I think that for us has also just been a big unlock as well, which is why Fable's quite good.
Yeah, I think that with yeah, and there's also like this conversation about like it like being removed from the subscription and it's going to be like charged by API.
Yeah,
But I do think
yeah.
that right now with the cost of running all these models, um, if you're on a subscription, you are getting subsidized.
Hmm.
So I think that eventually all these companies have to figure out like a way to make money. And that is something that I'm curious about the open source model as well, because say if an open source model that is just as good as Fable, like imagine that it exists, right? Like how much would it cost to run it? Would it be even cheaper if most of the cost is still the compute cost? And will it be even faster, because again, I think that the bottleneck right now is just like compute. That's just how compute is right now. We just have to, I guess, wait for NVIDIA to come up with like better chips for things to be better. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think it will happen. I think we're going to move on to the next round of trips very soon. Um, and I mean the amount that's being invested in the infrastructure layer is just insane. I mean it will make a really big difference to bringing it back to the MCP and MCP app ecosystem, because one of the biggest reasons why a lot of these tools are just not as good as they should be and will be is just speed. No one wants to wait 5, 10, sometimes 15 seconds for an app to load. Like that is insane. So I think the kind of speed of all this stuff will be really important. And yeah, I think we'll see that coming when models get better, inference gets better, and kind of general speed of the ecosystem improves.
Yeah, but at least we know that this is the worst it would ever be. It's only gonna get
Yeah,
better from this.
totally,
Yeah.
totally, totally. It literally is, and hopefully it gets better quicker than not. Um, yeah, so I think. Was there anything else? Were there any other big things that we wanted to cover this week? One thing we did want to share actually is that we do have a special guest coming on next week. So, or
Amazing.
next time. So we got a week off. The week after, we got a special guest that's coming on, and that'll be really really cool. So definitely tune in to check that out. We'll do kind of the normal episode. I mean, a ton of stuff's going to happen over the next couple of weeks, and then yeah, we'll also have them on, which will be really cool. Our first guest on the series, so that'll be fun as well.
Amazing. Very cool.
Awesome. Yeah, very good. Cool. Well, as always, you can check out the ecosystem tracker. Go to agentdiscoverability.com/track and check out more, on Fractal. Use fractal.com. I
Yes,
want to
if you
say
want to
.dev.
build an app that works for both ChatGPT and Cloud, and if you have problem making it work for both of them, we have spent a lot of time making them work for our customers. So feel free to like send out questions if you have any questions regarding building apps. Thank you.
100%. Very good. All right. See you next week.
Bye.